Yo, what is up, guys? Delboy here. So Terence Crawford knocks out Egidijus Kavaliauskas in 9 rounds to retain his WBO welterweight title, though in the process has a lot more problems than people anticipated. This was a really competitive fight throughout, and a much better fight than I was expecting personally. I knew Kavaliauskas was a decent fighter. Obviously, the best example of that was his performance against David Avanesian. I knew he was decent, but I didn't really believe he would give Crawford a whole heap of problems stylistically. But, that wasn't the case. He really did give Crawford problems, and he caught him with numerous shots throughout. So take the first 3 rounds, for example. I had Terence Crawford 2-1 down in terms of rounds, but I also felt Kavaliauskas scored a clear knockdown in round 2. He caught Crawford with a right hand, which clearly affected him, and he dropped. It wasn't a slip like the referee ruled, it was a genuine knockdown, and Kavaliauskas was robbed of that knockdown. Clear knockdown, in my opinion. And in the first 3 rounds, you could see Kavaliauskas was having a field day with that right hand. Terence Crawford in this fight came out as a southpaw, and he was a sucker for the right hand. He was open for it all night in the southpaw stance. And Kavaliauskas realised that, and he capitalised. So after 3 rounds, Terence Crawford was in a real fight. After the 3rd round, Crawford settled down a bit, but he was still getting caught with some big right hands throughout this fight, and he felt a lot of shots, by the way. It wasn't like they was bouncing off him, like Crawford made out in the post-fight interview. Like, he felt some of these shots. You could tell momentarily he was stopped in his tracks. Obviously, he was dropped legitimately in round 2. Crawford had some real tough moments in this fight, and I think a lot of it was due to the southpaw stance. People always praise Terence Crawford's ability to switch hit. I've seen people say Terence Crawford is the best switch hitter in boxing. Well, it wasn't a good display of that against Kavaliauskas because it was clear he was more vulnerable in the southpaw stance, yet he stayed in that stance for 7 rounds? Something like that. So, poor decision making from Terence Crawford in this fight. He put himself in danger by being in that southpaw stance, and on another night, who knows, maybe he would have paid for it. And by the way, I'm not saying in the early rounds Crawford wasn't having success. He was still landing some really good shots. It was very competitive, but a lot more competitive than we're used to seeing from Terence Crawford, especially against a guy like Kavaliauskas, who, with all due respect, hasn't really proven himself as an elite level welterweight. You really expect Terence Crawford to do a better job on these type of guys. A lot of people say he's pound for pound number 1, and it really wasn't that type of performance, it has to be said. So first 6 rounds, I felt Crawford was struggling, he was getting tagged, and Kavaliauskas was well in the fight. In round 7, Crawford adjusted, went back to orthodox, and that's where the trouble started for Kavaliauskas. He dropped Kavaliauskas in round 7. I believe it was a right hand that dropped Kavaliauskas. And from that point onwards, Crawford took over. He was hurting Kavaliauskas, and the writing was on the wall. Having said that, Kavaliauskas was still showing signs of resistance. So actually, for example, in round 7, he timed Crawford with another nice right hand, which Crawford walked straight onto. And again, I felt that was another shot that affected Crawford. But, from round 7 onwards, Crawford took the initiative a lot more. He was more aggressive, and he was hurting Kavaliauskas. So he dropped him in round 7. He had a decent round 8, where he hurt Kavaliauskas towards the end of the round, I believe, with a right hook. And round 9 was where this fight ended. He dropped Kavaliauskas twice in round 9. The first knockdown was a right uppercut, and funnily enough, this right uppercut came out of a southpaw stance. This was the best thing he did out of a southpaw stance all night, and essentially he had Kavaliauskas against the ropes, and he kind of feinted with a left hand, but switched and came back with a lovely right uppercut, which dropped Kavaliauskas. Kavaliauskas didn't see it coming, but he beats the count bravely, and after that, Crawford finishes him with a lead right hook, and he drops Kavaliauskas again, and the referee waves the fight off. So Terence Crawford retains his WBO welterweight title, but a performance in which he showed a lot of vulnerability. a lot of vulnerability. Terence Crawford put it down to trying to entertain the fans. I'm not buying that. I've always felt Terence Crawford's defence has been a little overrated. I think the guy can get tagged. We've seen that throughout his career, especially when he exchanges. When he exchanges, he kind of squares up and throws wide, looping punches. In those moments, he is vulnerable, and we saw that in this fight when Kavaliauskas was timing him with right hands. Terence Crawford can be caught. He's not invincible. And I've seen people compare Terence Crawford with Pernell Whitaker. I don't see the comparisons, I really don't, to be honest with you. But not to say Crawford isn't a good fighter, he is, but he's a lot more vulnerable than a lot of you guys make out, in my opinion. And I've got to say, I've said this for a while, but if Errol Spence is back to his best, he beats Terence Crawford. He'll walk him down, he'll beat him up, and he'll stop him late. Trust me on that. Errol Spence Jr. keeps a better shape. He's got better basic fundamentals than Terence Crawford. That could be controversial to say, but in my opinion he does. And I believe he'll take Terence Crawford out late on if they fight. And they're talking about a Sean Porter fight. Listen man, based on that performance, Terence Crawford will have a world of trouble. Terence Crawford's got a lot to prove at welterweight. He really does. Apart from the Horn performance, he's really not convinced me, I've got to say. The Benavidez fight, Jose Benavidez, who had one leg, gave Crawford a lot of problems, won rounds. Amir Khan, still managed to tag Crawford a fair few times, and now Kavaliauskas dropped Crawford and gave him problems throughout. So I'm not convinced with Crawford at welterweight, I'm really not. I really need to see a lot more. I need to see Terence Crawford fight somebody like Sean Porter or Danny Garcia, these type of guys. I need to see him fight these guys to see how good he is in the welterweight division. Because like I say, right now he's really not convincing me. But, not all negative. It was a good fight. I thoroughly enjoyed it. And Crawford, he's still got the job done. He showed some decent heart, I guess. He got through some rough moments, and he showed a good chin because Kavaliauskas can punch, and he got caught flush a fair few times here. So he showed a decent chin, he showed decent heart, and at the end of the day, he still got the job done, and he got the win. So you have to give Crawford credit in that respect. And also, just to throw it out there, in regards to this fight and how Crawford struggled, you never know, maybe it is due to people not knowing how good Kavaliauskas really is. Maybe he's a lot better than any of us realise, and maybe he'll prove that in his next few fights. I personally don't think it's down to that. Not that Kavaliauskas is a bad fighter, like I said, he's solid, but, based on Crawford's performances at welterweight, I can't really put it down to the fact that Kavaliauskas could be better than we think, because it's happened in more than one fight now. Benavidez, Khan, and now Kavaliauskas. So I think improvements are needed from Terence Crawford. Like I say, in this fight I felt defensively, he looked as open as I've seen him for a long, long time. He looked slower, he looked sloppy, sometimes his punch technique was off, again especially out of that southpaw stance, slapping with hooks, etc. Not really keeping his shape. And yeah, just really didn't look like he was at the office against Kavaliauskas. But anyway, share your thoughts below. Maybe I'm being a bit too harsh on Crawford's performance, maybe, but I'm intrigued to hear your thoughts in regards to his performance against Kavaliauskas. Where do you want to see Crawford go next? Who do you want to see him fight next? Do you like the Sean Porter fight? Do you think Porter can actually beat Terence Crawford based on that performance? And also spare a thought for Kavaliauskas. I'm certainly interested in watching this man fight again. If you match this guy correctly, he could be involved in some barn burners. Again, I always throw this guy's name out there in these type of fights, but Kavaliauskas versus Josecito Lopez, that'd be a war, an absolute war. So there are fights out there for Kavaliauskas. He certainly proved that he's a good fighter and he's a viable contender to some degree. So yeah, I'm also intrigued to see what happens with Kavaliauskas from this point onwards. But anyway, share your thoughts below. What did you make of Crawford's performance? And yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this video. Peace.